What's the nature of your emergency?
Welcome back to the Tactical Living Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Wilton, joined by Sergeant Wilton. Clint, how are you?
I'm good.
I have a really interesting concept today because we're going to talk about the art of saying no. However, if it wasn't for you to have not said no, then you and I would have never even met. I'll just quickly tell that story. But I remember I had gotten broken up with by my fiance, and you were always that yes guy. And my coworker, who happened to be the mother-in-law of your brother, actually decided that she was going to introduce you to me. So she calls you because she knew that you wouldn't say no to her ever, because you never said no to anybody. And you came to the workplace. She pretended like she needed you to bring her something, but she didn't. And she had the intention of just introducing you to me. So that's how you and I met. However, I feel like being too available is actually hurting a lot of us, especially first responders. So I thought that we could talk about that today.
And I go back to having those conversations, and I remember you bringing that to light to me, of always saying yes and being available for anybody and everybody. So if they called me, I was doing it. They said jump and I said how high, and having that recognition for myself, being able to change that. And it's okay to say yes, but it's okay to say no too. And having that understanding for yourself, being able to say, okay, I can do this, but I can't do it right now.
Yeah, from mandatory overtime to endless family demands, first responders can feel like they don't have permission to say no. And I think that pressure to always be on can lead to things like burnout and resentment, and of course, things like physical exhaustion. So there are some signs that we can be able to tell whether or not we're saying yes too often. And I think the first one is that you feel resentful after agreeing to something. So it's that sinking feeling after committing to something. I think that's a giant red flag that you didn't actually want to say yes in the first place.
Yeah, being able to recognize that, and then, because it's always easier, I think recognizing it's always easier to say no instead of just being agreeable all the time.
Yeah.
Because you can change your mind.
That's true. And I'm definitely struggling with this next one, is you rarely have time to rest. So if you can't remember your last day off or how you even enjoyed it, then you're overcommitted.
Yeah, having a balance when you're saying yes all the time to everybody. When do you have time to take care of yourself? And I think that's a huge thing, is you need to take that time to say no. It doesn't mean no forever. It's just no right now.
Yeah, something too is maybe your relationships are suffering. So if you are spread super thin and your partner or your kids or even your pets and coworkers feel this sort of disconnect, that could be a red flag.
Yeah, having that balance for yourself, being able to take that time, and because you're going all the time, and you're not ever able to just take a moment and say, okay, what's important to me right now?
Something else, and this is a major problem, I don't care where you work, this is a problem for you, is that you say yes out of guilt or obligation. So you're afraid of disappointing people. Maybe you're compromising your own well-being by saying yes. I know a lot of times, when I worked for somebody else, there would be times that I did not want to say no to her because I felt like it would reflect poorly on my performance, even though 99.9% of the things that I was saying yes to had nothing to do with my job analysis or had nothing to do with my time on the clock. And I know a lot of first responders especially will say yes to certain things. And it's because usually leadership doesn't want to do this shit work, so they're dumping it in your lap instead. So you're saying yes, even though you know that it's shit work and it's not your responsibility because admin should be doing it instead. So you do say yes. This compromises things because not only do you not want to do it to begin with, but that admin's going to be looking good and you're going to be looking like a nothing, even though you're the one doing all of the work.
That's where I think it's important to have the recognition. I think we forget it's easier, especially when you're in the mindset of saying yes all the time. And then when you say, I can't do that now, or you don't show up to it, or you're just trying to buy yourself time to give yourself an excuse to where you can say no, instead of just being straightforward and honest with someone in the onset and saying, I don't want to do that. People will respect you longer term if you're upfront with them on that.
Adding to that, a lot of people feel like they need to give their reason why or an excuse why, and you don't owe anybody anything. So, I mean, I'm great at this. Like, I have such strong boundaries when it comes to saying no. I have no problem with being able to say it, and I never give somebody a reason why.
Yeah, having that, and that's something that, like, I know for myself personally is, like, you say, no, I can't because, or no, I can't do that, or I don't want to do that, or whatever. You're trying to give it a reason instead of just saying no.
Yeah, I'm very blunt. No, because I don't want to.
Yeah.
Another way that you might be identifying that you say yes too often is if you feel invisible or unappreciated. So we gently mentioned this, but if you're constantly available, I think that people just start taking you for granted, and then they start taking advantage of you.
Yeah, there was a speaker that I heard years back. I think it was Ron Kaufman. He talked about, this level of expectation. Like, you do something nice for someone one time, and it's appreciated. It's they love it, and then you do it twice for them when they ask you to, and then it turns into more of an expectation, and the more you do it, it's just an expectation. So when you've done this instance for them time and time again, now they expect you to do it, and then if you say no, now you're the worst person in the world because you're no longer keeping up with their expectation.
I see a lot of people screw themselves out of promotions and raises for this very thing. So let's say that you're real clear. Okay, your position requires you to do a handful of maybe 20 things. Okay, this is what everybody else in your position does. This is what's expected of you. But then your supervisor asks you to do number 21, which really they should probably be doing. Then they ask you to do 22. And then 23 and 24. Why on earth would somebody promote you or pay you more when you're doing it at that level anyways? And the problem that lies here is that you think that by showcasing that you can do 21, 22, 23, that's going to make you look better to be able to get that promotion or to be able to get that raise. However, that's not how the bottom line works when somebody only cares about their pocket.
Yeah, especially when you're in an environment like in the first responder realm, and I've learned this, I've had to learn it the hard way over the years, and not necessarily with everybody, is you're doing something for one of your bosses, and it's not necessarily your job, but you're doing it for them to help make them look good, and you continue to do it to make their job easier and their life easier, but all it's doing is not benefiting you in any way. And there needs to be a healthy balance with that. Is like, take care of your friends and your coworkers, but don't do their job for them if they're just being lazy.
Yeah, I think there are some very tactical ways to be able to set boundaries without having the guilt. And one of them is to be able to know your limits and then stick to them. So that might mean something like capping your overtime shifts for the month and then honor that commitment to yourself.
Having that understanding is so important, because if you're limiting your work yesness, I don't know, then you can start saying yes more at home, and you can start being present and having that healthy relationship between work and home life.
Another thing you could do is replace I can't with I don't. An example of this would be like, I don't take calls after 7 p.m. and that's my boundary. One of mine is I don't allow notifications on my phone, even if it's a text message, period.
Yeah, having that healthy balance is important. And it's funny because, like, for me, typically after 7, unless it's an emergency, like, I won't answer my phone unless I know the person who's calling me, like, oh, they know they wouldn't call me unless it's something dire that they really need help with.
Communicate with confidence and not an apology. So saying no doesn't require a long explanation. Just be clear, be kind, and be direct.
Yeah, and having that understanding and being clear with how you're articulating it to your whoever it may be who you're saying no to, is you don't have to say, no, I don't want to fucking do that. Like, you can just say, no, I appreciate it, but I can't do that, or I don't want to do that right now.
Schedule non-negotiable personal time. So you can put things like rest and recovery in your calendar in the same way that you would with a shift or even a court appearance.
Yeah, sign up for that time as if you would as an overtime shift, like overtime for your recovery.
I think that no goes in tandem with being confident, and This isn't easy. I remember, Clint, when you first had to start saying no to people and how uncomfortable and even upset you were with me about it. That created a lot of dissonance between you and I. So I think that if you start out small by maybe declining a meeting, passing on an invitation, or ask someone else to be able to take that lead, it helps to build this sort of muscle that allows you to be able to be more comfortable when you're doing it in the future.
Yeah, having that understanding amongst your peers, amongst your loved ones to say it's no doesn't mean forever. It's just not right now.
You literally can't pour from an empty cup. So if you don't learn how to set your boundaries, I think that your health, your relationships, and your career will pay the price ultimately. So it's just super important. I hope you've gotten some value out of today's episode. If you have, do us a favor, drop a review, subscribe down below. And as always, know that I'm sending you a long, tight hug from my home to yours.